Welcome to Mindshift. I'm Brandon. Today is episode 8 of my series, When Christians Respond, where I quickly try to cover common Christian quips, claims, and counters. For today, we are looking at one that we have all probably heard before, which is, don't you know atheism is just another religion? There's a lot of holes with this one, and I like to try to provide as much detail about this as I can, again, in a short period of time. Let's first look at, why do Christians say this? What is the goal? What point do they think they're trying to make, or where does it come from? I have a few theories. My first is trying to equate worldviews. I think the reason that they do this is to try to level the playing field, almost, if you will. If atheism is just another religion and there's tons of false religions, they can just hold on to theirs and think that everyone else happens to have it wrong. But atheism, if it stands on its own as a lack of belief, that can seem much more threatening. That's something that needs to be argued against or contended with. And you can see this acted out. I mean, I have noticed in my personal life, anecdotally speaking, people are way more comfortable and familiar with even the most foreign or incorrect religion to them. I've seen Christians welcome Muslims quicker than they have welcomed me as an atheist. Surely they believe the Muslim is going to hell, is deceived to the utmost, and worships a false god. But yet, I pose a bigger threat. The Muslim belief is that their belief is slightly off, that they didn't get the whole message, that they just misunderstood some things. But ultimately, hey, at least they believe in God. How obvious. At least I'm not wrong for believing in a God. But again, the atheist, they challenge a lot more than that. So I think that equating worldviews here is a really big defense mechanism. And in a similar fashion, what all of this works together is to undermine the secular criticism. If atheists are just part of a belief system, who are we to critique another belief system? Even though that's a standard Christians would not hold for themselves. Again, a big one, even though they say it in the form of atheism is another religion, is actually that they're trying to get to the point of atheists have to have faith too, and thus they can use the faith as the great crutch. Look, man, you don't know, I don't know, we all have to believe in something. Who are you to say what I believe in is wrong? Look, you have to believe in things too. It is an overgeneralization, it is a black or white fallacy, it is completely missing nuance, and it is completely avoiding the issue that is someone that doesn't believe in a God. So again, I think there's a lot of reasons why people try to say this, but what I want to try to do in today's video is to take it all the way. If you're going to make this statement, follow the logic to its natural end. See the final conclusion. Does that make any sense? I hope to show that it does not. Quick caveat before we get into this one, I think it's also important to understand that the word atheism is used really carelessly, and it's kind of become an umbrella term for many things. I try to simplify as often as I can that atheism is simply a lack of belief in a particular God or God concept, but that can change from God to God. For instance, I'm an atheist to the Abrahamic gods. I think we have actual good evidence against their existence. I think they have falsified themselves right out of existence, whether it is by their triumny properties or their particular claims in their holy books that have not been backed up, or the mutually exclusive claims in those books, the contradictions, etc. I think we can say this God, as he is stated, cannot exist, and thus I don't believe in him. Other atheists will say, well, I just don't have good reason to believe, or I haven't been provided sufficient enough evidence to believe. And that's totally fair. It is for them to know, not you to assume, what they believe in and what they don't. We could also get into the issues of, do you get to control what you believe or not? And then there is the more agnostic side. I am very agnostic, so a lot of the claims that Christians will make against hardline atheists, they don't really apply to me. I'm open to there being a creator. I'm as open to a creator as I am to just a mystery we can't know, as I am to a Boltzmann brain, as I am to a VR game in the future, as I am to aliens who started this whole thing off because of their advanced culture, and we'd still have to answer questions for all of that. Where did they come from, etc. But until I have a God showing itself, giving me good reason or evidence to believe, I don't need to guess. I don't need to try to fill in gaps just to feel comfortable. I am fine with I don't know. And I don't know about you, but I don't know sounds like the exact opposite of a religion. And so today we're going to be majoring in the majors. We're going to talk about this main generalization of atheism, a lack of belief in God. Atheism. So I think we've defined atheism pretty good here. Let's define religion. I'm going to read off to you some definitions because, like everything, people can't always agree. And for each of those, I just ask you to think, does a lack of belief in God seem to fit? The first definition here is belief in supernatural beings or deities. So does atheism, a lack of belief in God, match up with this first definition? No. Next, we have sacred texts and writings. Religions often have sacred texts that are considered authoritative and provide guidelines for beliefs and practices. Does atheism have this? Now, maybe it's just general confusion. You might hear Matt Dillahunty talk about the secular humanist manifestos. That's not atheism. That's a philosophy, and it's predominantly shared by atheists, but not all atheists are secular humanists. This is the problem when you try to overgeneralize the term atheist and then go further and try to say that we are a religion ourselves. We don't even agree with each other, which is a point I'm going to cover here in a minute. Most religions involve rituals and practices and ceremonies performed regularly by followers, whether it is prayer or worship or sacraments or rites of passage or baptism. I don't know about you. I have never been invited to atheist church where I was invited to go through atheist baptism before I said a special atheist incantation before eating the magical atheist bread and performing the magical atheist blood ritual. I think ritual and tradition is beautiful, can be beautiful. I think that atheists can utilize it, but to say that we have some shared form of this is simply not true. Religions often distinguish between the sacred, the holy, the divine, the supernatural, and the profane. In religious case, the ordinary or the secular. We are the profane simply because we don't adhere to believing in what you believe to be sacred or supernatural. Again, it doesn't mean we don't have values or we don't appreciate certain things or even find certain things more important or most important. That is not the same thing. So I think it's really simple. Atheism simply lacks the general components that most religions are made up of and defined by. You cannot make a religion out of a lack of belief in a particular God. It doesn't make any sense. And that should be enough right there to just say, hey, this argument's really silly. It's like you're trying to define the exact opposite of something as a like kind. It's just not. So where does this confusion come in? Let me try to extend an olive branch for anyone that actually thinks this, that isn't thinking it maliciously or defensively. Do some atheists gather together in communities of like-mindedness? Yes. In fact, probably not even as often as they could or should. But does being in community make something a religion? Are the Olympics a religion? Is your local basketball team a religion? What about the book club that you are a part of? You have the same taste in books. You get together to read from this special book. You talk about your favorite parts. You talk about what you learned from it or the meaning or the moral that can be brought from it. That sounds a lot more like a religion than atheism. And yet I don't think anyone would call a book club a religion. That's why I can only see it as this silly defensive point that maybe someone heard an apologist say and they can just throw it up there as a quick hand wave. Again, if you really think about this, there's so many things between religion and atheism that should then get classified by religion if you're going to be willing to go all the way down here and label atheism religion. Another reason one might get confused is because atheists can be, are not always, and no more than anyone else, vocal. I'm a very vocal atheist, not actually in my daily life because I don't want to bother those around me and because I try to show respect to the Christians in my life. I know what they believe. They know what I believe. I don't need to shove it down anyone's throat. I'm not going door to door. I'm not leaving comments on Christian videos. I have my own channel where I post my opinion on these things because I know there are other people struggling and I believe I can help them. In that way, I am vocal. And even for other atheists that are more vocal and say combative or staunch atheists that want to win everyone else over to their side and they do almost evangelize to a certain degree. Again, you can do this with anything. You might believe Marvel is the greatest franchise in the history of the world. You might start a YouTube channel. You might talk about it in person and online. Would you ever say that all Marvel fans are in a religion because some Marvel people are particularly outspoken about their love for the franchise? Of course you wouldn't. And if you do, by the way, then you're just playing so fast and loose with the term religion that we don't even need to have this conversation. But being in community and or being vocal does not make atheism a religion. So what do I think is the crux of the argument? You also have faith, Mr. Atheist. As Frank Turek says, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because atheists need so much faith because of all of the things they have to believe in to get around not believing in God. It is silly to the nth degree, and I want to handle it here now. Here's just a handful of the things that I've heard so we can kind of have a jumping off point. Well, Brandon, you have faith that Alexander the Great was real. There's more attested historicity to Jesus than there is to Alexander the Great. Well, Brandon, you have faith in evolution. Well, Brandon, you have faith in the Big Bang. Well, you have faith in science in general is usually what it boils down to. You have faith in certain presuppositions that you cannot ground in reality, and on and on and on. And to a degree, again, if we're abusing the word faith of its inherent religious meaning, then yes. But I don't have faith in Alexander the Great, to go to that example, for my eternal salvation. I'm willing to just say, yeah, I bet most of what was written about Alexander the Great is true. I bet some things were exaggerated or made myth about, but I believe that he existed and he conquered a large amount of the world by a certain age. And I think we have a pretty good idea of when he died and who he surrounded himself with and who succeeded him, what happened to his empire, the source of his death, etc. But I need go no further. And by the way, if I'm wrong about any of that, totally okay. If we get new information tomorrow that disproves that or adds to that, totally okay. This is the distinction that I think Christians need to understand before they continue to say these kinds of things. When you tell me I have to believe that Alexander the Great really lived and died the way that I have been told he really lived and died, or else I am denying my creator, or else I am missing out on an eternity of heaven, or else I am signing myself up for annihilation or eternal torture. When you tell me that Alexander the Great is knocking on the door to my heart and wants a personal relationship with me because he is an entity that actually beat death and has something to offer me, then you're going to hear skeptical Brandon come out and say, whoa. How do we know? What does the literature say? Where does it conflict? What is the bias? Because those claims are way different and have way more impact and implication than generally believing about Alexander the Great or George Washington or whatever silly example they want to bring up. Same thing with the Big Bang or evolution. I believe so far, in terms of what we can tell and how we can tell it and how we can know that what we're doing is telling it, these things are the approximate methods and timing that we can understand our current situation. Could we be wrong? Yes. Have we been wrong in the past about things we thought scientifically were correct that now we know better than because of new information? Yes. That's the difference between science and faith. Science is trying to correct itself. Science is trying to prove itself wrong. Science is open to new information to make better understandings. Faith is, I have it right. I've always been right. These people who wrote something down 2,000 years ago knew more than I know now. And despite all of the evidence against it, I'm still going to believe this because otherwise it gets in the way of my personal imaginary relationship. And my only options are not to claim that I know that or believe in your particular God. I'm fine not knowing. I'm also fine accepting to a degree, since it doesn't impact my eternal soul, what the best minds with the best knowledge and the best instruments have been able to agree on thus far. But again, if more information comes out tomorrow and we find out it's 90 billion years old, great, I'll adjust. Or if we find out it's 3,000 years old, great, I'll adjust. I'm willing to follow truth wherever it goes. And by the way, maybe this is frustrating for you to hear because you've talked to atheists who say, no, I know this is true. This is when the world started. Or no, evolution could never, ever be disproven. There's nothing else that could ever come in and change my mind. Yeah, that's not a fun person to deal with. That does seem like someone who's made up their mind about something and is unwilling to take in new information. And as frustrating as that is, they don't represent all atheists. They don't conveniently for you make atheism a religion all of a sudden. And if anything, it might be holding up a mirror to some of the behavior that you see more of in your religious community. It just feels like such a weird attack to try to tell me what I'm really thinking or what I really believe in because it helps you cope with your current position of faith. Because to believe in a God who will not show up in the world visibly, even though he used to, who will not speak to you out loud, even though he used to, who is no longer doing signs and miracles for the masses to see, even though he used to, you have to take it on faith. And so an atheist who says, that's not good enough for me is a direct affront to you. I understand that, but this is not the way to deal with it. Imagine if an atheist told you, you don't have any faith. Did you feel how ridiculous that felt? Who are they to say? You know what you feel. So when you tell an atheist they actually have faith, that's how we feel. And again, there is some nuance here to thread through, but the colloquialisms of how we use these words mean vastly different things. And I think that most people understand that the terms religion Christian and religious faith are very different and should be very different than the terms atheism and best understanding so far. I think the other one that gets tossed around in here, especially within the conversation of you have to have faith, is even past the Big Bang or evolution or the histories of other famous people. You have to have faith in certain truths. If you're an atheist that uses logic all the time, you have to believe that logic actually makes sense, even though you only have your chemical and material brain to process that logic with. Or if you're an atheist and you believe anything can be true, you're having to make a presupposition that there is a thing as objective truth that would supposedly be coming from some greater source. Is the point they're making. That has to be God, and thus you actually do believe in God, even though you don't know it, because you believe in something higher than yourself that had intrinsic value without you and your chemical processes. And I understand the argument a little bit until you spend a little bit more time with it, and then it just breaks down. Listen, and I'm not going to be able to solve this today. We all have presuppositions. You believing that there has to be something outside of space and time that is the basis for everything, the designer to the design, the creator to the created. That's a presupposition also. I would rather have my presuppositions be that the law of non-contradiction makes sense, that I cannot be here and there. We use certain foundational truths best that we can to orient ourselves in this world and make useful our time here. Everybody does it. The difference is religious people ascribe that to their God. Me saying I don't necessarily have a place to ascribe it to, but it's the most useful thing to move forward with and is probably true. Again, granted, I might be in a simulation where I'm being told the moon is always there and it might not actually be there. It might not be objectively true that there's a moon to this planet or that I'm even on this planet or that I'm real. Like, you can go down as far as you want until we all arrive at the same thing. We can't know anything. But no one plays that game because it's not useful. And I'm willing to admit that to a certain degree, by the way. But again, insofar as we can claim anything, I am not going to claim things I can't know as the definition of perfect truth. I don't believe that. I'm without belief. And therefore, when that claim is about a God, I'm an atheist. I am not part of a religion. So again, if you want to change the definitions of all those words to make it fit so you can win this argument, that's fine. But the reason that people say that to people like me has nothing to do with that. And this got a little more tangential and philosophical and abstract than I intended it to be, because it really is rather simple. Religion as we know it is defined by certain things that atheists simply lack, and thus atheism is not a religion. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful day. I will see you Thursday for 2 Corinthians, and until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support: my Iconoclast, Boris, GVI, Jacob, Joe, Kitboga, Martin, Oliver, Perry, Rokkit, and Shawn, my Humanist heroes, Imposter, Jarrod, Kristi, YNWA, my Atheist advocates, Caleb, Jeff, Jeffrey, Karen, Maggie, Paul, Sparky, and Todd, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you believe in the mission of this channel, or you just enjoy its content, please consider joining these fine people.